Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you. Great to have you with us for this webinar with UKRL and Learning Partnerships. So, pleasure to have you joining. Just as a few of you are coming in, let me just give you the usual housekeeping. So, joining today in webinar mode. So, if you want to ask a question, you can do that by popping it into the Q&A box that you ought to be able to see at the bottom of your screens. If you can't wiggle your mouse, it will appear. If you've got any other questions as well, please do pop them into the chat. Yvonne will have copies of the slides. So if you want to have a copy of the slides after the event, please do either drop myself or Yvonne a note and we'll get those over to you. We're also recording today's webinar and we'll pop that up on our YouTube channel either later today or later this week. So if you have to head off for something else and you want to catch up later, or you want to share it with a friend or a colleague, then you'll be able to do that later on as well. And we can circulate the link to that as well, or we'll put that out in a members update later in the week if you miss it immediately. It's a pleasure to be able to put this webinar on today. I think, you know, like many of us, you've probably pootled up and down the middle and main line and spent most of your time feeling frustrated by the Wi-Fi, but probably out the corner of your eye at some point, you've caught sight of a facility at Leicester and thought, wonder what's going on there? Because I know that I have. And when I was lucky enough to be invited up to see UKRL earlier in the year, I was blown away by everything that's going on behind the scenes that you don't just see when you're going up on a passenger train. So it's a real pleasure to have this webinar today and to be able to have the opportunity to share a little bit more about everything that's happening there and indeed what's going to be happening in the future. And even more so to be able to have Mandy on this webinar as well, who's working very closely, I know, with the UKRL team on learning and development and competence and a whole host of things that are going to be hugely important to helping the business grow and prosper in future. So it's a real pleasure to put this webinar on today. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Gareth Roberts, who's the Managing Director at UKRL, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the business, what's going on and what their plans for the future are. So Gareth, many thanks, and over to you.
Thank you, Maggie. And thank you to Yvonne for working in the background to make this possible, and to the Rail Freight Group for hosting us today, and to everybody who's taken the time out to join us this afternoon. So what I want to share with you today is a story of a growth journey. It's about our hunger to grow further and to support the wider industry that we currently operate in. And it's a journey that puts our people and our customers at the very centre of that journey. That's really what we're going to be focusing on today. Apologies for those that love the pictures of the freight trains up in the air and the paint jobs coming out. Today very much is about the customer and our people that really propels the growth that we've already enjoyed, and that we are set to go forward over the coming years. So I'm going to share with you a bit of the philosophy around that, some methods, and what we're doing with Mandy and the learning partners to make that possible. So every journey has a beginning, and for UKRL that started in 2013, and it's evolved since in terms of what we offer and how we offer it into a product offering that sort of creates the core of where our growth will happen. You'll notice there's no leasing in there for a company that his name is UKRL Leasing. That's where the business started as a small leasing operation, but has since evolved to do what you can see on here now. Where does the magic happen? So as Maggie said, over in Leicester, we own the Leicester facility. That's where we conduct our level 1 to 4 maintenance operation for a number of vehicles. It's where we have our fuel spine and CET spine, and it's also where we've just finished the construction of a new shed that you would see from the main line, and that's where we are proud to host the new Stadler vehicles, the Class 99s that arrive this summer. Over in Loughborough, we took this facility on in 2022. Those that recognise it will recognise it as the old Brush facility. We have this now on long-term lease, and it really does now add to the capability around full heavy maintenance level 5 capability that we can offer both freight and the passenger market, and it's where we also undertake component overhaul. In terms of the customers that we deal with, this has been growing on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, really. Most of which I'm sure you'll recognise, and perhaps some are on the call today also. So what's next, and how do we get there? So over the last 5 years, we've experienced over 300% of growth. That's been organic growth across the product lines that you've seen. And the mission over the next 4 years is to double growth again, based on today's revenues levels. And I'm a big believer, really, that business growth is an outcome, not a task in its own right, and that sustainable growth comes from doing the right things, not as doing growth. And today, that's really what we're going to look at is what do those right things look like? And from my perspective and our perspective, it's about growing individual capability, developing that technical capability that the industry, I believe, is starting to lose and dilute. And how do we strengthen that? And also leadership capability from team leader upwards. Grow team effectiveness so that we can work together as an effective organisation, and grow our organisational capability in terms of what we do and how we go about doing it. And the result of that is really as an aim to enhance the customer experience. And if we enhance that customer experience, our aim is to become the partner of choice. And become the partner of choice is how we deliver the growth, not as doing growth in its own right. So how do we explain that to our people and our leaders? And the way that we get this across is to explain the customer experience as a product of what we do, turning the spanners, painting the trains, cleaning the trains, performing overhauls, and multiplied by how we do it. And if how we do it is a positive experience for the customers, it's a positive multiplier of that customer experience. And equally, if how we do it and that customer experience is a negative one, then that's a negative multiplier, and it erodes and devalues what we do. So a powerful message we try and get across to all of our teams. It's not just what we technically do, because ultimately our customers have choice. And what does that really look like, and how do we know when we get it right? So a real good starting point, I guess, is to understand what it takes to deliver poor customer service. And poor customer service doesn't take a great deal of effort. And when we deliver poor customer service, our customers are actively seeking alternative suppliers. We have to make a real huge effort to bridge that to good customer service. And this is where our customers are generally satisfied. But if a competitor comes along with a cheaper price, chances are they're off. And if we all do similar things in similar ways, there is no difference. The only difference becomes price. And having worked throughout the supply chain and a number of suppliers, you see this more and more, that there is this race to the bottom on price. And I believe that's damaged our industry and skill set as we try and chase the bottom line. So then it takes another huge leap of effort to get to excellent customer service. And that's when choice is no longer about price, but often the reward isn't proportionate to the effort. And where we're aiming to be and what we're striving to achieve is move the needle to outstanding customer service. And this is a relatively small gap to get there. But when we get there, what we see is our customers telling us that we're a trusted partner and we're integral to their operation. And why would I go anywhere else, even for a small benefit of price? And how do we describe that to our people? And I believe that outstanding customer service is just excellent service delivered by everybody all of the time. It's all about consistency, and it's recognizing that every interaction matters. It's not just about MD to MD, ops director to ops director. It's about everybody in our organisation, which is a lot of them who interact with a customer, and really getting that powerful message across that every interaction matters. This isn't, I guess, preaching where UKRL are. This is a combination of what we value, it's a combination of what we do today, and it's a combination of where we aim to be in the future. And we try to capture this in our core values over the past few months, so it can act as a decision-making tool at all levels. It aligns expectations and the organisation, and it allows us and our customers to hold us to account. So what we hold as valuable values, if you like, is we are a skilled team of people who care, and therefore we can offer unique capability that is value for money and delivered with pride. One thing that's particularly rare in many industries, we do what we say we're going to do. We always strive to deliver on our commitments. And being an SME, we're not a faceless conglomerate. We believe that we are easy to work with. And that's something that we're going to try and hold firm as we grow. I guess the bad news is every one of those is probably the most susceptible things to growth. And that's something that as a leadership team, we recognise and we aim to protect. So I guess this links nicely into why we chose to work with Mandy and the team at Learning Partners, is how do we take that philosophy and turn it into methods of how we develop the organisation with the people at the core to help deliver our growth. So we looked at the outcomes of what we're trying to achieve. And we were looking to embed a leadership development program that wasn't a one-hit wonder, off the shelf, deliver it once and back on your heads to how we used to be. The fundamental elements of that is defining what a good one looks like at every level. So really defining what the behaviours, skills and experience looks like from team leader upwards, and support and develop our leaders to support our customers, create a sustainable leadership pipeline, and also acknowledge those expert individual contributors who want to take that technical route and add value to the organisation and to the industry. We're also rolling out a team effectiveness program, which aims to develop the cross-functional relationships, reduce the friction in the organisation, create that level of mutual trust, which empowers the psychological safety, and really get into the rhythm of governance and act as a foundation for growth. And one thing that we're doing this spring with our first customer is to take that to one next level and use that same methodology to customer relationships and optimize our customer relationships for growth. So really get that level of empathy between supplier and customer, improve the communication, reduce the escalations that we typically see between our organizations, and really create that partnership for growth. So that's why we embarked on this with Mandy and the team. And I'll hand over to Mandy now, who's going to explain a little bit more about the how.
Thank you very much, Gareth, and thank you to Maggie and the Rail Freight Group for hosting this webinar today and having the opportunity to share this case study with you. A bit about Learning Partners first. We're a sort of hybrid consultancy, because when we set it up 30 years ago, my colleague Jackie and I, we had different backgrounds. I was a systems analyst, designing and implementing software systems, a whole range of different systems across the businesses, and helping improve their business process. And Jackie had an HR career with a very advanced organization who were experienced in competencies, in people processes. So she had a really good framework. So we sort of merged these two different experiences into Learning Partners. And what we found over the years is that if an organization wants to be successful, whether implementing change or business improvements or whatever, they need to focus on, as Gareth pointed out, not only the what they're doing, the tasks and processes, etc., but also the how, the skills, behaviors, and relationships that they employ to achieve success. So, for example, if you wanted to implement a safety process, but people weren't engaged with it, they weren't motivated to engage with it, they weren't clear about how that affected them day to day and what skills they needed, you probably find that that process was not implemented because it requires some behavior change. Or equally, if you have a person who has built up some new skills and wants to apply them, but doesn't have the opportunity and the tasks they're given to do, then that skill will not develop, and it will be sort of a waste of time of the person spent on it. Also, what we find often is if there's a lack of clarity in process, then that sort of builds up a head of steam and people get frustrated and causes frustration, problems in relationship, a culture of blame. So you need not only to tackle those issues with people, but also what is the process that is broken? How do we fix it? So what we do with our clients, and this is what we're engaging with the UKRL in the programme, is that we teach and embed task-related skills, tools and techniques to help people improve efficiency. For example, how to run better meetings, how to problem solve more efficiently, how to have clear responsibilities. And that then leads to people taking more accountability and ownership of what they're doing, which then leads to increased productivity, which then delivers profitability and growth. We also teach and embed people-related tools, techniques, and skills and behaviours that build engagement. So people understand their purpose, how they fit into an organisation, know when and what they can make decisions about so they feel more empowered, and can focus very easily on building their own capability. And all these things help senior leaders in our clients to create vision and clarity. And certainly working with Gareth, he's one of the best people I've ever worked with who has a vision and a clarity in his head. And therefore helping him and his colleagues in the SLT communicate that vision across the business is one of the things that we've been engaged in doing. We also help teams prioritise more effectively, allocate workload, and therefore enable them to deliver more efficiently, to help managers cascade information, delegate effectively so they're not working in the weeds and don't have time for their own job. We help individuals contribute and know how that contribution is valued and therefore are more inclined to achieve. We help clients and customers become partners and stakeholders to collaborate and to create synergies and alignment. So we've been working for 30 years with learning partners, and for the last 18 years in the rail industry, right across in lots of different organisations. Our first job was with Bombardier, where we designed and ran a global leadership programme and a team effectiveness programme and delivered that to many cross-functional teams in large projects, in rolling stock, in passenger service, in freight, in infrastructure, in bids and so on, in leadership teams. We worked with Network Rail extensively, so with Andrew Haynes when he first joined with his leadership team to understand what the priorities of the organisation were. We've worked with engineering, the health, safety and environment teams, HR teams, infrastructure projects, track improvements in route services, and with fleet maintenance managers, so quite an extensive experience with them. We've worked with Ian Prosser and Johnny Shute with the ORR, with the Safety Inspectorate, and with Hitachi on many different projects, but most recently a leadership programme in their services business for depot managers, and with Hitachi LNER and Agility Trains on building their partnership to make their long-term contract successful. And it's a great pleasure to work with Gareth, and this is the third organisation we've worked with Gareth in, which is why it's such a pleasure. And also we've worked in other industries, large organisations and SMEs. So our philosophy is to first of all establish a thorough understanding of the customer, and this was very easy to do with UKRL because Gareth has a very clear vision in his own mind and clarity of outcomes. So we have a particular questioning technique that we also teach to help people really get to the bottom of what needs to be done here. And we use lots of different diagnostics that are very effective in finding out what the requirements are in terms of what are outcomes, what are issues, problems to solve, what's important, what are the priorities. so that we can help determine the minimum amount of change for the maximum benefit. So it's very much in our minds to look at kind of a lean methodology, because we know that people in the rail industry, particularly as it's a 24/7 industry, that there's always more things to do than you've got time for, I would say. And these diagnostics cover both individual capability, looking at how teams work together, and how organizations can work efficiently, for example, in their end-to-end business processes and so on. So picking up on what Gareth has said about the what we do and how we do equation, we first started with Gareth and his team with the SLT at a team workshop, defining what the overall goals are and priorities for UKRL. And however clear these are, what you always find, I think, so we're working with hundreds of teams, we've never found a team where the common understanding of the overall goals is aligned, because people are different. They have different priorities, different things are important, they notice different things, they have different experience. So this was one of the activities, to define those overall goals and priorities and to clarify what the functional roles and responsibilities were, so these can be then communicated throughout the business. We're then working with leaders and managers across UKRL and teams and individuals to help them understand what their individual role responsibilities are, how they're measured, and how those measures align with the overall goals and priorities of the business. And we're doing this through team effectiveness workshops and role profiling workshops, where people actually work through what they understand is their actual job, the doing, the verbs, not just the nouns, and so on. This is a bit like the story of the chap at NASA who was asked when he was sweeping the floor, what's your job? And he says, I'm helping get a man on the moon. This is why alignment's so important. When you cascade objectives down an organisation, often by the time they get to an individual, they don't bear any relation to what they're actually doing on the job. So we take a different approach. We say, what's your responsibilities? How do you measure them efficiently if you're clear? And how does that then contribute to the overall goal of the business or to your function? So it's looking at aligning up rather than cascading down. And that increases engagement. So in terms of how we do it, at that workshop, as I say, we did an activity with the SLT to define what the core values are. And these represent the sort of personality of UKRL and what it's like to do business with them, whether you're a customer or a supplier. We then brought our own competency framework that we've developed over many years, which has skills and behaviours at different levels, so that you can see what good looks like, and it sets targets for expectations. And that's supported by our online learning platform, the Train Station, which I'll explain a little bit more about shortly. So we're delivering, as part of this programme, training, development planning, coaching, and on-the-job activities that are tailored to individual needs, so that the person can, as Gareth says, learn something and then it's embedded by practice on the job. So the results that Gareth and UKRL wanted to achieve, these are the outcomes about what? Clarifying areas of responsibility, reducing escalations, improving governance. So the role profiling methodology that my colleague Jackie designed, is used widely, helps people answer key questions like, what is expected of me and where do I fit in? So everyone understands their individual responsibilities, and they are aligned to the organisation's processes. That all roles contribute to the overall goals, and all roles make sense to the job holder, and they represent what the person is actually doing, rather than a job description which sometimes doesn't bear much similarity to what the job entails. So these roles build into a career path, so they form not only an efficiency tool, but they're also a career development tool. And you can then use them, as we're doing with UKRL, to make sure there are no gaps in the end-to-end business processes where you might things fall outside someone's notice. And this is where frustration builds up. And also to make sure that the handovers and overlaps are clear. And what this does, it helps you improve your governance, because if you know what you're responsible for and your colleagues are responsible for, it helps you understand what you need to report and communicate at different times, and when to meet and what to talk about at those meetings. So I spoke to John Steeples, who's the head of operations, before we did the webinar, and asked him for some observations on improvements he's seen since we started the training. So in terms of engagement, empowerment, capability, he said that you've created teams focused on specific work areas, for example, looking at the paint shop. These teams are therefore taking on more responsibility for their own growth, improvement and diversification of services, which builds UKRL's capability and capacity to take on more work, and also it's sharing expertise amongst the team. And in terms of ownership and accountability, team leaders, because they're clear about and understand their role, they're taking ownership of activities such as rewriting and improving critical risk assessments and engaging their own team members in this activity. So then they're all more involved and take more responsibility for safety and quality day to day. And team leaders are also producing realistic capacity plans every day, which then offer a firm base to work from when changes occur. And the role profiling methodology helps people be more efficient at distributing workload and allocating tasks efficiently. And as a result of that, there's less firefighting and fewer escalations. And even though there is still some firefighting and some escalations, these are more purposeful, and it is reducing. So in terms of how, we've started with some training for leaders and managers and people with high potential. We're doing one-to-one development planning. I and my colleagues are producing individual development plans for people, so they understand their strengths and they're very clear about what skills they're going to develop, and they have all the resources they need to develop those on the job. We're doing coaching where required, and the coaching can be things like lack of confidence, or perhaps there's an unhelpful behavior you want to change, or it might be you want to improve a relationship with someone. And the train station's providing on-the-job activities targeted at different skills and informal learning resources. So there are videos, webinars, notes, workbooks, reading material, which are all structured around the competency framework. So it's very easy to pick out which particular video to watch. So we're kind of curating learning, which is helping busy managers and team leaders who don't necessarily have the time to say, oh, look at this resource or that resource to develop this skill. And with the target set as behaviours and measures of success, you can actually do kind of bite-sized learning much more easily. So the train station is a website that we've developed, on which you can find the competencies, skills and behaviours all described at different levels. So it can help you grow in a skill, whether that's in scope, in difficulty and complexity. So it sets consistent targets for what good looks like. There are tools and techniques on this to develop all the skills, and all the training, coaching and one-to-ones and the development plans are structured around the competencies. Because it's online, it's available at any time. It's cost effective, it's easy to use, and it has all our combined knowledge and experience in learning partners included in all the resources on the train station. And there are different ways you can use it. You can use it by going through looking at competencies to look at your strengths and development needs, which is what we're doing in the development planning. Or you can access it to look at a particular skill you want to develop, or a specific resource or technique you might be interested in using. Or the webinars there are designed to cover tricky situations on the job. For example, how to have a performance management conversation, or how to tackle some conflict in your team, or things like that. And lastly, the behavioural competencies that go right through this programme, we sort of say they do what they say on the tin. They're not complicated. There are 4 in relation to task, and 3 in relation to people. So these help you identify what to learn and save time. They help you build your confidence when you are developing a particular skill, because you can find out what your strengths are. And also, if your team leader can't help you in, for example, improving how you do your planning or your problem solving, then all you need to do is look at the train station and watch a video, look at a technique, and then go and practice. So in terms of results from the how side of the program that we're running, the outcomes were to define what good looks like at every level, to realize leaders' potential and support customers, to develop a sustainable leadership pipeline, also and grow expert individual contributors, because this is one of UKRL's strengths in their organisation, their technical expertise, to show people how to show cross-functional empathy, so to see what it's like in someone else's shoes. So, for example, do your procurement people and your engineers know what it's like in one another's shoes? So are they getting on with one another? Do they see it from their point of view? How to build collaborative partnerships and improve communication. And part of the program in the training and the train station, the competencies is about building mutual trust and psychological safety, which is where people feel confident in asking a question, admitting they've made a mistake, or saying that I don't know how to do this, and really understanding what it's like to, someone's got your back. So you feel much more confident and safe in your working environment, and you as an individual to help you contribute. So from the point of view of outcomes, so the observation is that the leadership capability of staff has improved. So UKRL have already identified some new leaders for promotion and are starting to gather accurate data for succession planning, which is something that we'll be doing in the next few months. That people are reporting that they feel more confident knowing their strengths and also what they can do to develop their own skills. People are being more communicative and engaged with what's going on, so productivity is increased. It also means that leaders can find out a bit more about what's going on, so there are no surprises. They can sort of find out information from people in their team, and that the technical experts are also being developed to expand the expertise they offer. So all in all, it's been a great pleasure. I believe that UKRL and Learning Partners have a partnership. We have a partnership based on mutual trust, psychological safety and collaboration. So, we were role modeling the relationships that we want to build with other organisations ourselves. I think that's a really important part, and that's why it's such a pleasure working with them.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much, both of you. Thank you. Thank you for dropping your slides. But, I mean, it's incredible, I think, to see the investment that you're putting into the people and skills and development there, and it's to everyone's credit. Gareth, how do you feel that takes you on a journey of growth? I've worked in value-led organisations before, and it was kind of a great joy till everything went wrong.
Yes.
A new person at the top, and then it was a disaster. So how do you see keeping that sort of value-led, empowered organisation when your team is 200% bigger?
Yeah, indeed, and I guess it answers the question of really from a business and industry fundamentals perspective, why have we made this investment? And I think it comes after 20 years in the industry, realizing that the industry itself, it may forgive, but it never forgets. And as we embark into sort of diversifying into other service lines and product lines, we have to give ourselves the confidence and our customers the confidence that we are set up by design to deliver. And given that we're a people organization, we have to start with the individual capability and the leadership capability to do that. So in terms of how it contributes to growth, putting the organization in the best possible way to deliver is really why we've gone about as the of how we propel that growth.
And Mandy,
yes,
go on. Sorry,
make a contribution. If that's
yeah, of course.
If you look at day-to-day interactions, say for example, a team leader gives a job to somebody in the team, maybe they're not confident enough to ask questions so they don't quite understand, or maybe the job description, their responsibilities aren't clear, go away and have a go at it and do it badly, or do the wrong thing. Or if the team leader's spoken to them in a kind of an aggressive way, they can go off and, as we say, the chimp jumps out, and they can go and have a chunter with somebody else, or they can go and do the job in a half-hearted manner. And when they come back, if they then get blamed for doing it badly, then like it's a spiral of discontent. And all this takes a lot of extra time. It drains energy. And what we find is if the person is clear about what's happening, they know where they fit, they know how they get feedback and what they're doing well as feedback on any problems that they need to tackle. They know how they develop and how they can progress in an organization. They feel a sense of loyalty and ownership. And what then happens is that something called discretionary effort, the applied discretionary effort, which is I'll do it a bit faster, I'll do it a bit more efficiently, I'll think better about how I'm doing it. So you get more output. And there was a survey done a couple of years ago. There was one in the NHS and one done by a government organisation that found that in most organisations you can get up to sort of nearly 50% of discretionary effort in some cases, or maybe a third in others. There's all this extra work and output that people will voluntarily do if they feel motivated, engaged, purposeful, respected, valued, and psychologically safe. So basically, bottom line is you get more work done for less effort.
I can see that.
Simple as that, really.
Yeah. Oh, and whilst you're on, Mandy, at the train station,
yes.
So that's a platform that other businesses could access, yeah? It's not something you've made just for UKRL?
No, it's something that we'd like to make available for other organisations, because the competency framework is very sort of down-to-earth and practical. And it's been tried, the behaviours have been tried and tested through sort of many assessments and coaching and developing activities that we've done over the years. We've also our experience in neuroscience. How does the brain work? So therefore, if the brain works this way, then this is like giving feedback this way, it makes a person's brain work more efficiently. So therefore, don't try it that way, because all you're doing that way, you're building up an objection in the person's mind, or some negative emotion that they'll get chimpy and they won't do their best. So there's a lot of science behind it as well, which I'm particularly interested in.
Great. So if people want to know more, they can get in touch with you and see whether there's something they could take into their own businesses as well.
Yeah. I mean, we're a great believer in making learning easy and cost-effective. It doesn't get complicated. And if you make it in bite-sized chunks and you know what you're trying to achieve, if you've got an outcome for your learning, you will learn more. And also, if you get a reward for your learning, you learn faster as well.
And now forgive me, because I'm going to ask a freight question, but Gareth, we've seen from your logos list that the freight sector is obviously a big customer sector for you. Do you see that growing? Is that obviously the 99s, but more generally, is that part of your strategy?
It certainly is. Our ambition is to really put freight at the core of what we do, and really cement our place as the centre of excellence for all things freight, and really complement it with component work and passenger capability, which is my background. I've been in rail for just over 20 years now, and the last 18 months was my first foray into freight, and I'm not sure if there's any passenger community on here, but it is a more commercially friendly industry to work in, and I'm a big believer that collaboration is more powerful than competition, and I've seen freight model that.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think my experience in freight is that people are sort of in the almost mirroring what you're saying about those sort of goals and visions. We are often united around that sort of common desire to see freight grow and prosper in a universe where a lot of us feel that we're perhaps the underdog, and it does sort of have that connection, which perhaps mirrors some of what you're trying to build in your business as well.
Indeed, yeah.
Brilliant. All right, I haven't got any questions being asked, I think, but people have taken a lot from it, I'm sure. So unless there's any last minute people flying in with questions, we will thank Mandy and Gareth ever so much. A really, really fascinating presentation. And no doubt when you get started with 99s, we'll all be looking out the window a little bit more to see if we can spot one or two of them popping in and out of the shed. But perhaps you'll come back and tell us a bit more as you go on that journey, and you, Mandy, as well.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Meanwhile,
Thanks.
thank you ever so much for your time today. Really fascinating. And thank you all for joining us. So enjoy the rest of your afternoons.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay.